After 5 years in prison, I had barely set foot back home when I learned my son had died. Before that blow could even sink in, I saw a strange car parked in the yard, the curtains replaced, the locks brand new. And when the door opened, my daughter-in-law stood there calm, like this house had always belonged to her. Behind her was a man who wasn't her husband, looking at me like I was the one who'd gotten lost. They were living in my son's house, using his things, and talking about his death like it was a formality already finished. My name is Robert Harlan, 58. I lost my freedom for 5 years, and I'd just lost my only child without even getting to say goodbye. But my son left behind a letter and a key, and I understood immediately. He knew this was going to happen. If you were me, could you stand it? And where are you watching from? What city? And what time is it for you right now? I walked out of prison after 5 years with a clear plastic bag of belongings and a few release papers. I had only one destination, my son's house, Daniel Harlan. I'm Robert Harlan, 58 years old. I used to be an industrial electrician. I'm used to living by discipline, but no discipline can prepare you for the feeling of the world continuing to run while you're kept locked in place. I called Daniel right at the bus station. It rang and then stopped. I told myself he was driving or busy with Mason, my grandson. Daniel had promised he would pick me up. I held on to that promise like the last rope. A taxi took me to the northern suburbs of Columbus. The house Daniel bought 3 years ago. Cream-colored paint, a front yard with a maple tree, a garage big enough for a pickup truck. He had once sent me a photo of a workbench he built himself and texted, "When you come home, I'll let you use it." But when the car turned into the cul-de-sac, I saw things that didn't belong to my memory. The lawn was cut short like it was being prepared for sale. The mailbox had been repainted, and the name on it was no longer Harlan. In the driveway was a glossy black sports car, the kind Daniel always mocked as show-off junk. I stood on the porch looking at a brand new doormat with big letters, "Guests welcome." I knocked. The door opened a crack. Brittany, my daughter-in-law, stood there, hair neatly curled, a light-colored sweater, eyes cold and empty as if I were a task to handle. "Dad?" she said. "Where's Daniel?" I asked. "I'm home." Brittany didn't open the door any wider. Her hand gripped the edge of the door. Her wedding ring was still on, but it looked like something worn just to fit the roll. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. I blinked. "What did you say?" She swallowed hard, glanced to the side, then said the sentence that stole my breath. "Daniel is gone. He's dead, Dad." I stood still. "When?" "Last year." "A year?" My son had been dead for a year and I didn't know. I wanted to scream, but my throat only let out a broken breath. "Let me in," I said. "I need to know how he died. Where's Mason?" Brittany shook her head immediately. "No." From inside the house came a calm male voice. "Who is it, babe?" A man stepped into the hallway. Tall, broad shoulders, black t-shirt, arms tattooed with letters. He looked at me like he was appraising an old item. Brittany hurriedly said, "Daniel's father." The man nodded slowly, then called me by my name. "Mr. Robert." My spine went cold. I had never introduced myself. "Who are you?" I asked. He gave a small laugh. "I'm here to help Brittany. You just got out of prison, don't make a scene." I looked past their shoulders. The hallway was empty, no family photos, no sound of a child. The house was as quiet as if all life had been drained out of it. "This is Daniel's house," I said slowly. "I want to see the paperwork. I want to know where he's buried." Brittany pressed her lips together. "Everything's been handled. Don't make a mess." And in 22. Near the kitchen, I saw a picture frame turned face down. That wooden frame, Daniel built it himself. I understood immediately. They were wiping his traces clean. "Daniel wouldn't want you to do this," I said. Brittany looked straight at me, and the words she said were like a knife. "You weren't here when he needed you. They used the same 5 years I was locked up to shut me out of every right to grieve." I took a deep breath. "Mason is my blood. I have the right to see the boy. S. 8 being Dua." Brittany shook her head. "You don't have any rights here anymore." I looked down at the steps and saw a cardboard box, the lid marked in thick marker. Old stuff. One corner of the box stuck out with Daniel's leather glove, the one he used when fixing the truck. The smell of fresh paint inside mixed with an unfamiliar coffee smell. not the kind Daniel drank. I suddenly understood they were changing the air, changing even the memories, as if my son had never existed. The door started to close. I put my hand in the way, but the man placed his hand on the door and shoved hard. I had to pull my hand back before it got crushed. Then I heard the lock click, a small sound, but it echoed like a hammer. I stood on my son's porch, staring at the guests' welcome mat, and understood they weren't just taking the house. They were trying to erase Daniel from the very place that used to belong to him. I stood for one more beat on the porch, listening to the lock swallow my life. Inside, the TV came on, as if this house could keep living without Daniel, without me. November wind slid through the bare maple trees. I looked at the black sports car in the driveway, at the brand new doormat, then at the nameplate on the mailbox that had been painted over. Daniel used to call this place a real home. Now it looked like a stage that had changed actors. I didn't have a key. I had nowhere to go. I walked to the end of the street, sat down on the edge of the grass, and called Daniel again. Still dead. I suddenly remembered Daniel once said Brittany changed her number a lot. Back then, I thought it was just temperament. Now I saw it was a way to keep people from tracing you. I called Mr. Warren, the next-door neighbor Daniel used to mention. "Hello?" a hoarse voice answered. "Mr. Warren, it's Robert, Daniel's father. I just got back. They said Daniel is gone. 2,000. Silence stretched. Then he lowered his voice. "Are you standing in front of his house?" "Yes." "Don't stand there long. Someone's watching." "What did Daniel die from?" "I don't know everything," he said. "But the funeral was done really fast. I didn't see anyone from your side. Then not long after, some strange guy moved in. They said he was family. Where's Mason?" "I haven't seen the boy in a long time. Over the summer I still heard a bike. Now it's quiet." Well before it, I looked up at the second-floor window. New curtains, pulled tight. Not a single trace of a child. "Do you know where Daniel is buried?" "Maybe at Maple Grove Cemetery," he said. "But don't ask Brittany. Ask at the funeral home. I saw their car with Parkside on the plate." I hung up, my hands shaking not from the cold. A year. A fast funeral. A child disappearing from the yard. A strange man who knew my name. Those things weren't random. It was like the smell of electrical wiring smoldering behind a wall. Not on fire yet, but something was definitely heating up. I got up and walked around the neighborhood like someone looking for air. At the corner, a pickup truck sat idling, the person inside unmoving for minutes. When I walked past, the window rolled down and then back up. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're back, huh? Don't cause trouble." I didn't have to guess who sent it. I could see it clearly. They had prepared for me in advance. I went into a small diner near the gas station and ordered black coffee. I opened my phone and searched for news about Daniel's death. No obituary, no post. Daniel had friends, co-workers. There was no way it could be wiped that clean. I stared at an old photo on my phone. Daniel holding Mason, smiling wide, eyes bright. I remembered his voice. "Hang on, Dad. I'll keep everything." I swallowed hard. If Daniel had kept it, why was I locked out like a stranger? I decided to go to Parkside Funeral Home. The lobby was empty, the smell of dried flowers and floor polish clinging to my throat. A middle-aged woman at the reception desk looked up. "I want to ask about Daniel Harlan's funeral," I said. "My son." Her smile sagged. She typed a few things, then shook her head. "I can't provide information unless you have written authorization. I'm his biological father." She lowered her voice. "The file has a special note. I'm sorry." "What note?" She didn't answer, only glanced toward the glass door. "Someone is waiting for you on the side." I turned. In the narrow walkway beside the building, an old man in a knit cap stood leaning against the wall, a broom in his hand. He looked straight at me like he'd been waiting a long time. I stepped out. He didn't introduce himself, only asked, "Are you Robert Harlan?" I nodded. He spoke very quietly. "Don't go back to that house tonight. If you want the truth about Daniel, I have something you need. But not here." The old man with the broom led me to the parking lot behind the funeral home, where yellow lights lay over the wet pavement. He walked slowly but steadily, like someone used to standing beside things no one wants to say out loud. "I'm Harold," he said. I do odd jobs here and at Maple Grove Cemetery. I remember Daniel. My son's name tightened my chest. What do you know about him? Harold looked around, then pointed to a wooden bench against the wall. Sit. There are people here who like to watch through the glass. I sat. They told me I need written authorization. There's a note in the file, Harold replied. Brittany requested restricted information, especially for the paternal side. I saw her sign it, saw her tense like a stretched wire. She's afraid. Afraid of what? I asked. Harold didn't answer right away. He pulled an old brown envelope from his coat pocket, the edges worn. On the outside it said, For Dad, if Dad comes back. I jumped to my feet. This is Daniel's? Daniel gave it to me 3 months before he died, Harold said. He came here alone and asked if I'd be willing to help his father if one day his father came back and no one told him the truth. I thought he was worrying too much, but his eyes looked like someone who already knew. I held the envelope. My hands trembled. Why didn't you give it sooner? I called Daniel, Harold said. The number was disconnected. I called Brittany using the number in the file. She said you weren't allowed to be contacted and that Daniel didn't want to see his father. I didn't believe it. Daniel wasn't the type to turn his back like that. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a neatly folded letter, a small key tied with a red string, and a scrap of paper with an address and a string of numbers. I opened the letter. Dad, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it in time to tell you in person. I believe you were set up. I saw strange money transfers and paperwork I didn't sign. I put everything somewhere safe. Brittany will look. The man with her will look too. Don't argue at the door. Follow this key. It unlocks the truth. My throat tightened. I kept reading, each line like a blade. I'm also not sure my death was an accident. If I disappear fast, if they rush the funeral, understand this. They're running. Take this to a lawyer. Don't win loud. Win clean. I folded the letter and pressed it tight against my chest. Where's Mason? I asked, my voice breaking. Harold shook his head. I didn't see the boy at the funeral. Only Brittany, that guy, and a few strangers. No one was allowed to get close. Is Daniel buried at Maple Grove? I asked. Harold looked straight at me. Listen carefully. The records have Daniel's name, but the grave isn't there in the normal way. I checked. I saw a temporary plot that got its number changed. The manager said the family requested privacy. That's not right. My heart pounded. You think they're hiding even the burial place? I'm not concluding, Harold said, but I know the smell of dirty business, and you need to move faster than they do. I looked at the key in my palm. What is this address? A self-storage place in Westridge, Harold answered. The numbers are the gate code. If you go, go now, before they think you have anything. I stood up, my mind narrowed to a single straight line toward the highway. Before I left, Harold said slowly, Don't go back to that house until you have paperwork in your hands. They don't fear shouting. They fear evidence. I nodded. I walked into the lot and opened the car door. On the way, I watched the rearview mirror more than the road signs. At the third intersection, a black car followed, keeping its distance. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Don't do anything stupid. I turned the phone off, cut through an industrial area, then merged straight onto the highway. The self-storage sign appeared. I entered the gate code. The gate slid open, slow and heavy like a warning. And for the first time since the lock clicked on my son's porch, I knew I wasn't empty-handed anymore. I drove straight into the storage yard, pale yellow lights hanging high, wind whistling through the steel gaps. The black car was still lurking behind me, so I stopped near the office for a few seconds like a passerby, then turned into row D. Row 100 was dead silent. I walked fast between two lines of roll-up doors, my hand tightening around the small key Daniel left behind. I stopped in front of the door marked 108, a new silver lock, heavy, the kind that can withstand rain and snow. Daniel always prepared for the worst. I inserted the key. Click. A crisp, final sound, completely opposite the lock on his porch. Here, what opened was an opportunity. I pulled the roll-up door up. Inside was dark and dry. I turned on my flashlight. The beam swept over cardboard boxes stacked in neat lines, a metal rack, and a folding table covered with a cloth. Everything was so clean it sent a chill through me, as if Daniel had packed up his life before someone turned off the lights. On the rack was a black hard folder, handwritten, Dad. I opened it. Copies of the house deed, the mortgage contract, bank statements, car repair receipts, printed text messages. I flipped quickly, my eyes stopping on strange withdrawals. Regular, transferred into an account under the name Brittany. There was also a life insurance beneficiary change form, signed not long before Daniel died. My heart pounded, but my head went cold. Money doesn't know how to lie. On the lower shelf was a small box sealed with tape, marked, Watch Last. Inside was a data drive, Daniel's old phone, and a red-sealed envelope. Don't open if you haven't backed up. I didn't open it right away. I photographed every page, recorded a video of the entire unit, panning past 108, the lock, then my face to timestamp it. I sent those files to 2 new email addresses, like dropping anchors on 2 shores. If someone stole my phone, they still couldn't steal the truth. I plugged the drive into my phone with an adapter. A file appeared. For Dad. I pressed it. Daniel was sitting in the garage. The white light made his face look thinner than I remembered, his eyes hollow, but his voice was still steady. Dad, if you're watching this, it means they did what I was afraid of, he said. Dad, you didn't do that. I know. They planted something dirty in your car. They called the police. They had a witness, and Brittany signed papers to lock every door after you got arrested. I gripped the edge of the table. One breath, then Daniel continued, slower. About my death? I don't have absolute proof yet, but I have signs. The night before the accident, I was made to drink something that knocked me out. I heard Brittany talking to that guy about insurance money and speeding it up. If I die, you'll be kept quiet. If you get out, you'll be seen as dangerous. That's the plan. I felt my eyes burn. I didn't wipe them. I let the tears fall, not because I was weak, but because Daniel was finally here, guiding me. Daniel leaned forward, holding a stack of papers close to the camera with signatures and timestamps. In the red envelope is the lawyer's name and instructions. Dad, please, don't go to the house. Don't say one extra word. Take everything, and let the law speak. The screen went dark. In the unit there was only the sound of wind. Outside the row, there was a faint clink of metal, like someone had just brushed a roll-up door. I turned off the flashlight, stood still, listening as footsteps faded away. They were looking for me, but now I wasn't empty-handed anymore. I had something they couldn't bend, my son's words and the trail of money. I pulled the roll-up door down as gently as I could, locked it, then left row D like someone who had just walked through a church. In the car, my hands still smelled like metal. My mind ran like a machine. Back up, seal, find a lawyer, don't go home, don't let them drag me into the mud. I opened the red envelope right there in the parking lot under the lights. Inside was a business card and a trifold sheet of paper. The lawyer's name, Janice Park. Her office address downtown. On the last line, Daniel had handwritten, Dad, trust paperwork, don't trust words. I drove straight to Janice's office the next morning. No sleep. My eyes burned, but I kept my face calm like the day I stood before a jury for the first time. Janice Park was around 40, her hair in a neat bun, thin glasses, her gaze sharp and quiet. She listened without interrupting. I told only 3 things. I had just gotten out. Daniel was dead, and I had evidence my son left behind. When I set the black folder on her desk, Janice opened it, flipped a few pages, stopped at the statements and the beneficiary change form, her lips pressed together. Do you have the originals? She asked. They're in the unit. I recorded everything and backed it up. Good. Janice looked me straight in the eye. From now on, you don't meet them. No texting. Don't stand in front of the house. If you want to win, you have to win clean. Do you understand? I nodded. More than anyone, I understood the price of one impulsive sentence. Janice called an investigator into the room. He was short, broad-shouldered, spoke little. She handed him a list. Pull the storage facility camera data, the gate entry logs, match license plates, extract transfer histories, and especially Daniel's death records. We'll run 2 tracks, Janice said. 1, reopen your case. 2, request a review of the cause of Daniel's death, but everything has to follow procedure. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text popped up. "What game are you playing, Robert?" Right after, it came a photo of me walking out of the unit, blurry, but clear enough. They had been tailing me. Janice saw it. She didn't flinch, just said, "They're panicking." "Good. Panic makes people sloppy." She handed me a small recorder. "From now on, every call they make, you record it. And you answer only one way. Please contact my attorney. Not one extra word. If you can the time now." I held the recorder, and it felt like holding another key one that locked my mouth shut. That afternoon, Janice filed an emergency motion. I didn't understand all the terminology, but I understood the goal. Freeze assets, protect evidence, stop them from selling the house or moving money. At the same time, the investigator brought back a copy of the gate camera footage. The black car had entered 4 minutes after I did. The license plate was clear. That night, Brittany called. I stared at the screen, my heart beating, but not from fear, from rage. I hit record. "Robert," her voice softened. "Why are you doing this? Daniel is gone. You're back. Just live quietly." I looked at Daniel's letter on the table. I answered exactly what Janice told me. "All communication goes through my attorney." She was silent for a second. Then her voice turned cold. "You think you can get anything back? You were in prison for 5 years. Who's going to believe you?" I clenched my jaw. I didn't argue. I only said, "Contact my attorney." She exhaled hard, and before she hung up, she blurted one sentence short, sharp as a blade. "Don't dig into his death." That was the first time Brittany accidentally admitted what she feared most, and I knew I was going the right way. After that call, Janice didn't say, "I told you so." She just pulled her desk calendar closer and circled the next 3 days in red ink. "They'll do 3 things," she said. 1. Smear you, so you lose your temper. 2. Make a move on the unit. 3. Manufacture a reason to call the police. The next morning, exactly that. A neighbor texted me a screenshot from the neighborhood group. Brittany had posted a long message, saying I was a just-released criminal, that I was threatening her and her child, that I had dangerous behavior. Under it were comments that were half pity, half fear. I looked at it and felt like laughing. They didn't need the truth. They needed a story that was easy to swallow. Janice told me to screenshot it, save it, and then stay absolutely silent. "If you respond, you lose," she said. "We'll let the court and the bank accounts respond." By noon, Janice's investigator called. Someone tried to get into Westridge storage. They stood in front of Unit 108, messed with the lock, then walked away when they saw the camera. He sent me the video. A baseball cap pulled low, but the gate and the black car were way too familiar. Janice sent a preservation request to the storage facility and filed a motion barring them from approaching the evidence. "They're signing their own confession," she said. That night, Brittany called again. I hit record. This time her voice shook, but not from remorse. "What do you want?" she asked. "You want money?" "I can make a deal." I could smell panic. "Contact my attorney," I said. "Don't do this to Mason," she blurted, fast, like she'd slipped. "He's been through enough already." I stood up, my heart pounding. "Where's Mason?" Silence. Then the sound of a man in the background yanking the phone away. "Don't ask so many questions. You're just a stain coming back to wreck someone else's home." Janice sat across from me, signaling with her hand. "Stay calm." I said only one sentence. "My attorney will be in touch." He scoffed and hung up. Right after that, I got a notice from the police. There was a complaint accusing me of harassment and threats. They wanted me to come in. Janice went with me. At the station, the officer looked at my old record like he was staring at a stamp that had already been pressed. But Janice sat down on the table. Copies of the threatening texts, the photo of me being followed, and the video of them at the storage unit. "My client did not go to their house," Janice said. "But they are trying to access evidence, and they are moving assets. If you don't want to get pulled into obstruction of an investigation, I suggest you document this immediately." The officer stayed quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "We'll document it." Walking out of the station, Janice spoke softly. "They'll try one last move. They'll invite you to meet in person. or they'll stage something to get you to violate a restraining order. Don't go alone. I looked at my phone. A text from Brittany. Tomorrow at 6, Inniswood Park. Talk like adults. Come alone. If not, you'll never see Mason again. I finished reading, my throat dry and raw. Janice looked at me and said flatly, "Good, we're going, but not the way they want. Soon." I arrived at Inniswood Park at 5:45. The sky was gray, the wind was cold, the bare oak trees looked like dry arms. Janice wouldn't let me go alone. She stayed in a distant parking lot with the investigator and 2 plainclothes officers. I was just bait. But this time, the bait had teeth. I walked along the trail by the lake. I carried an old file bag, deliberately letting the edge of some papers show as if I were truly foolish. I heard dry leaves being crushed behind me. Then Brittany appeared. Long coat, carefully done makeup, like she was coming to a photo shoot, not to talk like adults. Behind her was the man, same sneering smile, and farther off, in the parking area, the black car was parked tight to the curb. I saw a third man standing near the trunk, hands in his pockets, eyes constantly darting. "You came alone," Brittany said, trying to sound gentle. I didn't answer that. "Where's Mason?" I asked. She pressed her lips together. "He's fine, but you're making everything worse." The man cut in. "What do you have in the bag?" "Documents," I said. "What Daniel left behind." Brittany blinked fast. Then she stepped forward, her voice dropping. "Give it to me. We stop. You take money. Then you go. Don't dig deeper." I looked her straight in the eye. "You sound exactly like someone who's afraid of the truth." Brittany's face darkened. She glanced at him, then said something that made my blood turn cold. "You don't understand. Daniel brought it on himself." "Brought what on himself?" I asked, slowly. She didn't answer. Instead, she tipped her chin slightly. The third man by the black car started walking over, holding a stack of papers on a clipboard. "Mr. Robert Harlan," the man said loudly. "I'm here to serve a restraining order. You have been harassing my client." Janice had warned me. They would stage a process server to provoke me into making contact, then record it on video, then call the police claiming I attacked. I stayed still, arms hanging loose, not stepping forward even once. But Brittany's man wouldn't stop. He lunged, trying to rip the file bag out of my hand. When I held on, he yanked hard, snarling, "Give it to me!" "Nine." And at that exact moment, Brittany murmured, just loud enough for their camera to catch, "Put him back in prison. He deserves it." Janice and the 2 plainclothes officers stepped out like dark shapes rising from the water. "Don't move," one officer shouted. The process server froze. The man let go of the bag and stumbled back. Brittany still tried to smile. "You're misunderstanding." "No," Janice said, her voice flat. "This is a trap, and I have it recorded." "And—" The officer handcuffed the man first. Brittany screamed, her voice breaking. "No, this is my house. This is my child." I stepped closer, looking at her one last time. "That was Daniel's house," I said. "And you just confessed you're afraid of me digging into his death." Brittany went silent. The cuffs snapped shut, the click sharp in the cold wind. 3 months after that afternoon at Inniswood, I stood in the county courtroom. Janice sat beside me, a file binder as thick as a brick. When the judge read the decision to reopen my case and vacate the old conviction, I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes for a second, like a man being pulled out of cold water. I exhaled slowly. Daniel's house was sealed for investigation. Accounts were frozen. Brittany was charged with document forgery, obstruction, and theft. Her lover was arrested for extortion and violence. Daniel's death was reviewed the right way. Medical records, appointments, medications, cameras, and even the unusually increased insurance. I didn't say, "I knew it." I simply handed the investigators my son's letter and let the truth run on its own. Mason was placed with me by the court under kinship care. In the first weeks, the boy slept in broken stretches, startled by the sound of doors. I learned how to mix formula, learned the therapy schedule, learned how to sit still while he spoke in a small voice. Mom said I was a burden. I held him and said, "You're the reason I'm still standing." I sold that house. Not because I lost, but because I didn't want the place Daniel lived to be smeared by them anymore. I opened an education account for Mason and set up a small fund in Daniel's name to help people who were wrongfully convicted find a lawyer. My lesson is simple: silence to hold your position, and paperwork to hold justice. If you were in my situation, what would your first step be? What city are you watching from, and what time is it?